Hey everybody, your name here. And I've got a question. Ever feel like you're just surrounded by people, like everywhere you go there's just more people? Well, today we're going to the opposite end of that spectrum. We're diving into the world of the sparsely populated, the wide open spaces, the places where your nearest neighbor might just be a mountain lion. We're talking about the least populated states in the United States. Now you might think, oh, low population, that means boring, right? Wrong. These states might not have the hustle and bustle of a big city, but they're full of incredible landscapes, unique histories, and yeah, maybe a little bit of loneliness. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on a virtual road trip across the emptiest parts of America. We'll explore why people chose to live or not live in these states, and discover what makes each of them fascinating in their own right. Let's go! Alright. First up, we're heading to the least populated state in the lower 48, Wyoming. We're talking about a land where cowboys still roam. And no, I don't mean the Dallas Cowboys. I mean actual cattle-wrangling, Stetson-wearing cowboys. Wyoming is famous for its wide-open spaces, and I'm not exaggerating. Imagine driving for hours, the highway stretching out before you like an endless ribbon with nothing but rolling plains and towering mountains in sight. It's beautiful, sure, but it can also be a little isolating. See, Wyoming's population density is incredibly low, like, really low. To put it in perspective, imagine if you took the entire population of New York City and spread them out over the entire state of Wyoming. They'd each have a pretty good amount of personal space, wouldn't they? So why so empty? Well, the weather plays a big role. Wyoming winters are brutal, with blizzards that can shut down entire towns for days. I'm talking about the kind of snow that piles up higher than your car. And then there are the summers, which are hot, dry, and prone to wildfires. But hey, if you're someone who values solitude, independence, and maybe owning a really warm coat, Wyoming might just be the place for you. Plus, you can't beat the views, especially if you're a fan of, breathing fresh air and not being stuck in traffic. Speaking of fresh air, Wyoming is home to Yellowstone National Park, one of the most awe-inspiring natural wonders in the world. We're talking geysers, hot springs, bison herds that could rival a small city's population. It's like stepping back in time. So yeah, Wyoming might not be for everyone, but it's a state that rewards those who crave wide open spaces and a connection to nature that runs deep. Next stop on our low population tour, we're traveling east to Vermont, a state that's basically the embodiment of quaint. Think rolling hills, charming villages, and more maple trees than you can shake a stick at. And yes, the syrup is just as good as you've heard. Vermont is known for its rural character. We're talking small towns where everyone knows your name, general stores that double as community centers, and a pace of life that's about 1,000 miles per hour, slower than what you find in, say, Manhattan. Now, if you thrive on the energy of a big city, Vermont might not be your cup of tea. The largest city, Burlington, has a population of just over 40,000, which, let's be honest, is basically a small town by most standards. This lack of major urban centers is a big reason why Vermont's population remains relatively low. Young people, in particular, often leave the state in search of more job opportunities and, a social scene that extends beyond the local farmers market. But here's the thing about Vermont: what it lacks in urban excitement, it makes up for in natural beauty. We're talking stunning mountain ranges, pristine lakes, and forests that blaze with color in the fall. It's the kind of place where you can hike for hours without seeing another soul, or spend an afternoon kayaking on a lake so still it feels like a mirror. And let's not forget about the food. Vermont takes its local produce seriously, and you can find farm-to-table restaurants tucked away in even the smallest villages. Plus there's the cheese, the craft beer, the maple everything. Seriously, they put maple in everything in Vermont, and I'm not complaining. So, if you're looking for a place to escape the noise and reconnect with nature, Vermont might just be calling your name. Just be prepared to fully embrace the slow life and maybe invest in a good pair of hiking boots. Okay folks, get ready to bundle up because we're heading north, way north to Alaska, the largest state in the United States. And when I say large, I'm not talking Texas large, I'm talking could fit Texas twice with room to spare large. Alaska is a land of extremes. We're talking towering mountains, glaciers that stretch as far as the eye can see, and a coastline so vast it makes you feel like you're standing at the edge of the world. It's breathtakingly beautiful, in a wild, untamed kind of way. But let's be real, the main reason Alaska's population is so low is the cold. And I'm not talking about your average winter chill. I'm talking about the kind of bone-chilling, face-numbing cold that can dip below -50 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, you heard that right. -50. Then there's the darkness. During the winter months, many parts of Alaska experience something called polar night, where the sun barely rises above the horizon, if it rises at all. Imagine living in a world where it's dark for weeks on end. It takes a special kind of person to handle that. But for those who do brave the elements, Alaska offers a sense of adventure and isolation that's hard to find anywhere else. It's a place where you can go days without seeing another human, where you might encounter a moose wandering down the street, and where the northern lights dance across the sky in a symphony of color. And let's not forget about the wildlife. Alaska is home to grizzly bears, bald eagles, humpback whales, and more salmon than you can shake a fishing rod at. It's a nature lover's paradise, as long as you're prepared for the, shall we say, invigorating weather conditions. So, if you've ever dreamed of living off the grid, exploring untamed wilderness, and maybe seeing the northern lights, Alaska might just be the adventure you're looking for. Just make sure you pack a really warm coat. Okay, we're heading back to the lower 48, but don't put away your winter coats just yet. We're stopping in North Dakota, a state that's often described as windy and flat, and you know what? Those descriptions are pretty accurate. North Dakota is the heart of the Great Plains, a vast expanse of grasslands that stretches as far as the eye can see. It's a land of big skies, endless horizons, and you guessed it, a whole lot of wind, like the kind of wind that can knock you off your feet if you're not careful. Now, North Dakota has its charms. The people are known for their friendliness, the pace of life is slow and steady, and there's a certain beauty to the stark simplicity of the landscape. But let's be real, the main reason North Dakota's population remains low is the lack of job opportunities. Agriculture is still a major industry here, but it's not exactly a booming sector. And while there has been some growth in the energy industry in recent years, it hasn't been enough to offset the steady outflow of young people seeking their fortunes elsewhere. The harsh winters don't help either. We're talking about the kind of winters where the temperatures plummet to levels that would make a penguin shiver, and the wind howls across the prairie like a banshee. It takes a special kind of resilience to make it through a North Dakota winter. But for those who do call North Dakota home, there's a strong sense of community and a connection to the land that runs deep. It's a place where you can still find wide open spaces, starry skies that go on forever, and a pace of life that's refreshingly slow. Our final stop on our low-population road trip takes us to South Dakota, a state that's probably best known for its iconic Black Hills and the presidential sculptures of Mount Rushmore. But there's more to South Dakota than meets the eye, even if it sometimes feels like you can see everything from a mile away. South Dakota shares a lot in common with its northern neighbor. We're talking wide-open spaces, a rural landscape dotted with small towns, and a pace of life that's about as far from the hustle and bustle of the East Coast as you can get. Like North Dakota, South Dakota's economy has struggled to keep up with the rest of the country. Agriculture remains a major industry, but it's not exactly a recipe for rapid population growth, and while tourism does bring in some revenue, it's not enough to sustain a thriving economy year-round. This lack of job opportunities, coupled with the harsh winters and the relative isolation of many parts of the state, has led to a steady outflow of young people seeking better prospects elsewhere. It's a trend that's familiar to many rural states across the country. But for those who stay, South Dakota offers a sense of community, a connection to the land, and a way of life that's fast disappearing in many other parts of the country. It's a place where you can still find a slower pace of life, wide open spaces, and a sense of history that's palpable in the air. And let's not forget about the natural beauty. From the rugged peaks of the Black Hills to the rolling prairies that stretch as far as the eye can see, South Dakota is a state that rewards those who take the time to explore it. So there you have it, a glimpse into the lives and landscapes of some of the least populated states in the United States. And as we wrap up this virtual road trip, I'm left thinking about something. We often equate population density with excitement, with opportunity, with progress. But what these states have shown us is that there's a different kind of beauty, a different kind of pace, a different kind of life to be found in the wide open spaces. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle and bustle of our increasingly crowded world. But sometimes it's good to be reminded that there are still places where you can find solitude, where you can connect with nature, where the pace of life is a little slower, and the stars at night shine a little brighter. Maybe, just maybe, there's a lesson to be learned from these sparsely populated states. Maybe it's about finding contentment in simplicity, about appreciating the beauty of open spaces, about recognizing the value of community and connection in a world that often feels increasingly isolating.